Ms. Stepanek, in your own words, the only facial characteristics you could describe on the perpetrator were that he had a bigger nose and mouth than what you normally see. Is that right?
Yes.
And by mouth, did you mean lips or something else?
Lips.
And you were only in the perpetrator's presence for about 2 minutes. Would that be accurate to say?
Yes.
And during your time as an employee at Casey's, your estimation was that 1 or 2 black customers would come in during any given shift. Is that right?
Yes.
But that you would not recognize any black customers as regular customers. Is that accurate to say?
No.
Would you please explain why that would not be accurate to say?
We have people from Coggon that have come in on a daily basis that are of some type of color. Yeah.
And what would be your estimate for the number of those individuals?
It'd still be like 2.
And during the time that you were working at Casey's, outside of your work hours, you would not see any black people on a regular basis unless you were in Cedar Rapids. Is that accurate to say?
I wouldn't say that, no. I went to a school that had some diversity in it as well. I had some classmates of mine that were of a different race.
And you went to school in the Northland School District, is that right?
Yes.
And you had 1 black classmate, and that person was a woman, is that right?
Yes.
And what town did you live in when you were going to elementary, junior high, and high school?
I've lived in Ryan my entire life.
And where approximately is Ryan?
It's about 5 to 10 minutes from Coggon.
And what's the estimated population you would give for Ryan during the time that you lived there?
About 350 people.
Do you know if there were any residents of the town of Ryan that were black when
Yes.
you were living there? And what would be your estimate for that number?
I don't know.
Would you ever see black people in Ryan on a regular basis when you were living there?
Yes.
And about how many people that were black would you see on a regular basis?
I couldn't give you a good number.
Could you give your best estimate?
I would say 25 to 50 people.
And prior to today, have you seen news reports and social media posts and other information about what happened to you at the Casey's and the aftermath of that?
Yes.
And in the articles that you have seen and the posts that you've seen, some of those have included Mr. Donahue's picture, is that right?
Yes.
And when you've seen Mr. Donahue's picture with those articles, has the articles always identified him as the person the prosecutors have accused of committing the crimes at Casey's?
Yes.
And what's your best estimate for the number of times you have seen Mr. Donahue's picture prior to today?
20 to 50 times. 20 to 50.
Since the incident happened to you at Casey's, has anyone ever showed you a series of pictures of people with similar characteristics to the perpetrator in the Casey's and asked you whether you could identify any of them as the perpetrator?
No.
Since the incident at the Casey's, has anyone ever asked you to look at an in-person lineup of several individuals with similar characteristics to the perpetrator and asked you if you could identify any of them as the perpetrator?
No.
So when the prosecutor asked you this afternoon at our trial whether Mr. Donahue was the person you saw in the Casey's, was that the first time anyone has asked you to make an identification attempt of the perpetrator?
Yes.
And when the prosecutor asked you to do that this afternoon, was it clear to you that Mr. Donahue was on trial for the alleged crimes at the Casey's?
Yes.
And was it clear to you that Mr. Donahue was sitting at a table with his attorneys when the prosecutor asked you to make that identification?
Yes.
And when the prosecutor asked you to do that, was it clear to you that the group of people sitting in front of you and to your left was the jury in this case?
Yes.
And other than members of the jury and a gentleman who is a cameraman, did you see any other black individuals in the courtroom when the prosecutor asked you to make the identification attempt?
No.
When the perpetrator was in the Casey's, was he wearing any gloves on his hands?
I don't believe so.
Was he wearing any other sort of covering on his hands?
No.
And shortly after the police found you in the cooler, they asked you to write a written statement about what you experienced. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you complied with the officer's request to provide a written statement. Is that right?
Yes.
And did the officer tell you that you should include important things in that statement, or did he give you some other sort of instruction?
The only thing that he instructed me on was to put what belongings I was missing.
And did you have all the time that you needed to prepare that statement?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness with a document?
You may.
Thank you.
Ms. Stepanek, I just handed you a one-page document. Would you please take all of the time that you need to review that document and tell me when you've done so?
I reviewed it.
Is the document I handed you a fair, accurate, and complete copy of the written statement you provided at the officer's request, either late in the evening on June 21st or early in the morning on June 20? I believe I misspoke there on the dates, so I'll start the question over. Is the document you just reviewed a fair, accurate, and complete copy of the written statement you provided either late in the evening on June 20th or early in the morning on June 21st of 2021?
Yes.
Did you mention anywhere in that written statement about the perpetrator asking for money in the kitchen?
I don't believe so.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness to obtain the document?
You may.
And Ms. Stepanek, the entire situation at the Casey's on June 20th of 2021 was very scary for you. Would that be accurate to say?
Yes.
Has there ever been a more scary event that has occurred in your life?
No.
Ms. Stepanek, prior to the perpetrator arriving in the store on June 20th of 2021, had you received complaints about blood on the floor at the Casey's?
No.
Your Honor, no further questions for Ms. Stepanek.
Ms. Edwards, do you have any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. I'll ask the question, and if you need to see the statement again, you let me know, okay? You also didn't put something in there about the man wearing a black hoodie, right?
Yes.
When we heard the 911 call, did you describe him as wearing a black hoodie?
I believe so.
And in your statement, you didn't say that you were crying in the cooler.
No.
But were you crying in the cooler?
Yes.
I don't have any other questions.
Mr. Stiefel, any further cross?
Ms. Stepanek, regarding that written statement, you included many more things than the items that were missing of yours. Is that accurate to say?
I don't know.
Would it help to answer that question if you saw your statement again?
Yes, please.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
You may.
Thank you.
Ms. Stepanek, I have just rehanded you a copy of the written statement you provided. Please tell me again when you've had enough time to review that.
I put that I had my purse with ID, debit card, COVID vaccination card, a store key, and my car keys.
And there were several other details that you included in that statement about what happened to you at the Casey's on June 20th. Is that right?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Anything further, Ms. Edwards?
No, Your Honor.
You may, you can step down, ma'am.